And I think that's to me, that's part of the joy of college and of working with college students is they are being put in a position where they have to figure things out on their own. And it's fun because they're kind of squirrely, but they're also more open to some of that instruction than maybe they've been previously. I mean, I think about even my own kids who are great, but there were things that they thought they knew. And then they got to college and realized, oh, wait a minute, I may not know exactly everything. And I had that same experience. You talk about the washing machine. I mean, that kind of stuff. I remember being 18 and knowing everything when I got to college. And then I got to college and realized I didn't know a dadgum thing and had to, reassess how smart I actually thought I was. And it's a really fun time to be a part of students' lives as they're sorting it out. And even we have lots of older, they're younger than I am, but adult students who come back to school at OCCC. And it's fun to watch them too, because they're learning as well. And they're trying to renegotiate and navigate a new way of life. And it's just, it's weird to talk about school being fun, but where I get to sit, it's a great time.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, the author podcast, where we talk to amazing authors from around the world. And if you're thinking about it's back to school time coming up, it's hard to even say that because summer's just beginning. But I know plans have to take place, and your kids might be going off to school. And sad as that is, you need to make a plan. And there's a book here that's going to help you today. And Jay Hall is on the show. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a book he also wrote about for dads. We talked about that on Dad Space, but we're going to bring it up here as well. Jay is an author. He's a podcaster. He does a lot of great stuff in the world, and he's fun to talk to. So we're in for a good conversation. Jay, welcome to Living Next Chapter.
Thanks, Dave. I'm excited to be here. And again, you have set me up for this kind of large expectation of being fun to talk to and an amazing author, but I will do the very best I can.
Well, I just read from the list that you gave me. So it said I had to say all these nice things about you, and you gave me the list. So
wasn't even in quote.
Hope I didn't miss anything, but that's okay. Good. Awesome. Jay, tell everybody where you are. Where do you live?
I live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, in the middle of Tornado Alley, and we're in the middle of tornado season. When Dave and I were talking just yesterday, we were talking about the fact that I've been in my shelter or discussing going into my shelter for several days over the past week. So if you want a little adventure in your life, come to Oklahoma and duck tornadoes. But we get such a bad rap for that kind of stuff. It's a beautiful place. I love living here. We have great basketball right now. Thunder 1-1 in the finals. Mm-hmm. And so this has been home for most of my life. Lived in Texas for a little while, but born and raised here, and have spent 45 of my 54 years. So it's home.
Nice. As long as we don't get really windy in our conversation today, I want to make sure you're fine.
The wind is all out.
So just pat your head if something's coming that I need to know about, and we can take a break. I've actually had 2 interviews in the past where people have had an earthquake during the recording. And my guest is like looking up at the ceiling, looking around with this look on their face like, oh my gosh. One was in New York, and their building was moving.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I'm like seeing pictures bouncing off the wall. And I'm like, are you okay right now in the recording time? Do we need to stop? Right. But yeah.
We're just outside today, so shouldn't be any of that.
Okay, good. We're good.
The earthquakes we have are so small that we'll never know they happened.
All right. Okay, good. All right. Well, all that aside. Excellent. Glad to have you here, Jay. We do have authors that listen to the show. They are early days in their journey of becoming an author and writing their story, sharing their words with the world. And they're looking at you going, oh my gosh, this guy's got 2 books. Like he's writing, he's doing all this stuff. I'm just starting. I don't know what I'm doing, Jay. I don't know how to get to where you are, but you've done it. So can you give us some kind of parameters, some advice for a new author listening on writing and sharing their book? What would have been helpful for you?
Well, I will tell you 2 things that were helpful for me to actually get going. You mentioned the podcast, and I think we'll talk about it more in a minute. Yeah. So my first 2 books are both nonfiction. So if you are in that space trying to figure out how to get a story out into the world that's something you know about or something you have expertise about, one of the conversations was with a guy who writes in the leadership space and was talking about just this is how he puts his chapters together. And it was tell a story, connect some content to it, tell another story, connect some content to it, and then apply it, and there's a chapter. Okay. Well, I can do that, right? Because stories I can tell, as you know and your listeners will soon find out, stories are easy for me, and content works and putting that together. But what that did, and I think this applies to any writing, at that point, then I didn't have to write a book. I had to write this story about this thing. And then I had to write this piece of content that connected to that thing. And so I'm not one of those like incredibly disciplined writers that say I'm going to write 1,000 words a day if it kills me. That's not me at all. But what I can do is sit down and say, I'm going to write the application section for this chapter, or I'm going to write this list of things about college that I know we need to talk about. And then if I write more, great. But if not, at least I've hit this one little thing that I wanted to get done. And I think that can apply to fiction as well. I want to write this scene. I want to write this conversation. I want to write this battle. I want to write this description, and then just let things flow from there. Instead of, I've got friends who write 2,000 and 3,000 words a day, and man, good on them. But I don't have that kind of time, and I also don't have that kind of focus in my life, really, to be honest, to do that. But the other thing, I interviewed a guy who wrote a book that was 9,000 words. That's it. That's about 30 pages. And that conversation, and has done very well, and is, great book and great what that did was give me permission to write a short book. So my first book is only 100 pages. It's about 28,000 words. And for most of the time prior to that conversation with Kevin, I kept thinking, well, if I'm going to write a book, I've got to write 50,000 words or 60,000 words. It's got to be 200 pages for it to be worth it for people. And he was like, no, I mean, mine's 9,000 words. I sell it for $4 and people eat it up. And it kind of opened the freedom to write as much as I felt like I needed to write, but not write a whole lot more just to meet somebody's expectation of word count. Now, having said that, I'm independently published, so I get to make those decisions.
Right.
Very different deal if there's a publisher saying, well, we're going to charge $28 for this book, and so we need to make sure that it's 200 pages so people feel like it's worth it.
Okay, because one of the understandings that I have, and it might be completely unfounded, so if you need to correct me, please, Jay, you have full freedom to do so, was that back in the day, a book had to be a certain size and length so that it had a binding. And on the binding, you could have the name of the book, because books are sold in stores, like your background here I'm seeing on the screen. Books are sold in stores, and all you see is the binding. You don't see the beautiful cover because it takes up less space on the shelf. So if your book is too small, there's no binding, there's no title of the book, and your book is not going to be seen on the shelf. Now, I don't know if that's true at all, but in a digital world where a lot of things are sold online, we're not actually looking at the binding as much.
I think there was a time where it was true, because the only place you could sell books, like there was no internet to go buy books. So the place you went was to a physical bookstore, which, by the way, I still love to do. And they are trying to conserve space on the shelves to get as many books as they can. So yeah, it was all about the binding, the spine, and you wanted to make sure that could be seen. Yeah. In the digital world, I have books that are on sale at bookstores. That's, less than 1% of my book sales, because the internet exists. And so you can go to all the places that you would buy books and see the front cover, the back cover, the table of contents, all that stuff that you would do if you pulled it off the shelf at the bookstore. But I don't have to convince you to pull it off the shelf by having a spine that grabs you.
Yeah.
So I think that was true. And probably that conversation with Kevin helped me realize, oh yeah, like that kind of stuff doesn't matter as much. Now, again, in traditional publishing, there is still that thing of, we don't want to charge, so my first book that's 100 pages is only $10.
Yeah.
They don't want to charge $10 for a book, because then that eats into the market.
Right.
So they would take, in fact, I know someone that they've done this with, a 30,000 word book and spread it out across 150 pages by, making the font huge and doing other things, because it feels better if you buy something for that much money that you have that many pages to turn.
It's almost like, what's the length of a podcast?
Right.
Well, I'm going to make it 3 hours because that's popular. I only have 10 minutes of content, but I'm going to make a 3-hour podcast out of this. So to stretch the book too far, it's like an elastic band. At some point, it's going to snap. Right?
Yeah, that's it. So, and you run out of things to say, or you run out of things that you want to say. With the college book, that book could be 400 pages, because I just kept thinking about, we got to talk about this, we got to talk about this. But it didn't have to be that long. So you figure out kind of where the stopping point is, and then you stop and move on.
So that's nice. That I like that we have permission to, especially if we're publishing on our own.
Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit too. But yeah, I think it's a great perspective, and I'm glad that you picked that up by interviewing that other person.
Yeah.
That's nice. It seemed like it opened a door for you.
No, it absolutely did. That's the beauty of the podcast has been all these conversations with authors like you have that have just opened my eyes to what's possible and what this world could look like beyond I need something that's going to go sit on a bookshelf at a store because that's the only way to publish and the only way to write.
And for those listening at home, that's called a segue. Well done,
played.
Jay. Well done. Okay, let's talk about the podcast, Jay. I love it, and what I love about your show, it's not about every author everywhere. You are super focused on a specific geographic location for your authors. I think that's a great secret sauce. But tell us more about your show.
So the show's called the Okie Bookcast, and for those of you who don't know what an Okie is, that just means a person from Oklahoma. If you've read The Grapes of Wrath, that's where it came from. We've kind of stolen it back and made it more positive than they did. Okie is OKIE, Bookcast. And yeah, like Dave said, I talk to authors and other storytellers connected to the state of Oklahoma. So they either live here now, or they're from here and live somewhere else, or they've written a book that is about something connected to the state. So I can kind of push that envelope as far in whatever direction as I need to. But the point really is to amplify this incredible literary scene that exists in a place that most people don't think about having much of a literary scene. You think about tornadoes, which I didn't help that stereotype when I introduced myself earlier.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
But you don't tend to think about, I mean, we have Pulitzer Prize winners and National Book Award winners and, multi-million bestsellers. I mean, all these incredible folks who either are currently writing now or who have written from Oklahoma or about Oklahoma. And so I just want to shine a spotlight on those conversations. So I interview authors, I interview booksellers, I interview librarians, book publishers, just lots of different kind of people in the space. So for those of you who are writers and trying to kind of find your way, there is a wealth of information in those interviews, both from writers. A lot of the writers I talk to also teach writing in different places. So I've learned a ton just asking them that question of what do you tell your students? And then we have, every month, I sit down with my daughter, who is also an author, and we have a book chat where we just talk about what we're reading. We give some reviews, we give recommendations, we bring in a guest and let them talk about what they're reading. And that is a little bit of everything. My daughter writes horror and mystery thrillers and is segueing into romance, which makes no sense in those two things together, but for us. So we read a little bit of everything and just have a ton of fun. So if you're looking for book recommendations, those Next Great Read shows are great for that.
I like this. I like the idea of your show. And then again, going back to the fact that it's geographically centered around where you are. You must be getting those emails though, Jay. Hey, I got this great author, love to be on your show, and they're from New York City. And you're like, nope.
Almost every day. And
okay.
It's funny. I can laugh at it. If I didn't laugh at it, I'd probably get annoyed by it. There is a publicist, and I will not name them, I will not out anybody, who sends me probably once a week a new book that she wants to pitch for the show. And every time I respond with the exact same email. Now I just copy and paste it. This sounds great. My show is focused on authors from Oklahoma. Can you help me make the connection to Oklahoma with this author? Never response. But next week, I will get another email about another book that she's hoping to get on the show. Someday she's going to have an author who's accidentally from Oklahoma, and we'll have a great time.
Okay, I'm asking just out of curiosity. Would you have an author on not from your area, but writing about your area from a different perspective? Okay, good. In
fact, there are a couple of authors who've written fantastic histories of Oklahoma and Oklahoma City that I have been desperate to get on for 3.5 years and just can't quite get them to decide it's worth their time. So
I've had authors on this show from your part of the world.
Really?
And I'm asking them right now as you're listening to this, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect podcast for me. You got to reach out to Jay like right now.
You on?
Like while we're recording this.
Well, as soon as we get done talking.
Okay.
The whole show and then come on and hit me up.
Yeah, if you're hearing this now and we haven't even released it yet, you're awesome. So well done. But reach out to Jay. I know he'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. If there's a starting point for a new listener coming to your show, most recent episode, episode 1? Like, where would you send them as a new listener?
I think the beauty of it is you can really go anywhere you want. So I try to be very intentional with the titles of with the show of the episodes that talk about this is the kind of person I'm talking to, or this is something that they write. So if you're into children's authors, there's a whole bunch of episodes where I talk to children's writers. If you're into comics, I've talked to comic book authors and artists, and that's usually in the title. It's certainly in the show notes. And if you go to my website, okiebookcast.com, I have some Spotify playlists that I've created on that site where you can go. And if you're interested in Native American authors, there's a playlist there. If you're interested in children's authors, there's a playlist. So the answer to the question is anywhere you want to start. I have about 110 total episodes. Actually, it's more than that now, 120. So there's a wealth of information. And if you're interested in the recommendation side of it, not so much the author conversation side, we have almost 3 years of those queued up. And you can start those anywhere as well because we're just talking about books all the time.
Can we hijack the conversation for a second?
Do what you got to do.
Can we just do a little shout out for your daughter as an author?
Oh,
does she have where can we find her stuff?
So her name is Hannah Herron, and her website is hannahjoyherron.com. Very original. Actually, it worked out well that was available. She has a couple of thrillers that are out. She has a horror novel called The Ashford House that's out. I will tell you my favorite of her books is her first novel called Awake that is just fantastic. And those are all independently published. She's now working on the romance side to get an agent and do all of that. So none of that is available yet. But yeah, if you're interested in horror, especially psychological thriller kind of stuff, hannahjoyherron.com, you can find some good stuff there. Thank you for talking about her.
Yeah, no, I can see a proud papa moment there. I like
absolutely.
That. When you read her words, though, are you concerned as a parent? Like, do you have to pull her aside and go, are you okay?
Okay, this is so funny because my wife has asked me that question too.
Okay.
My wife is she's not an avid reader. She can read. I want to be careful how I say that.
Yeah.
And so, of course, she reads Hannah's books when they come out. And her latest one, The Ashford House, she was like, Jay, are you worried at all that she thinks? But you got to understand, Hannah and I have been talking about Stephen King and Dean Koontz and this kind of stuff since she was about 14. And that may, cause some of your folks to think certain ways about me or about her. That's okay. We were careful about some of the introduction to that. But she is the sweetest. You would never in a million years, if you met my daughter, had a conversation with her, sorority girl from the University of Oklahoma, all that nice as she could possibly be, you would never in a million years think she writes some of what she writes.
I had a horror author on my show, and their comment to me was, I love hanging out with other horror authors because they're the nicest people in the world.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait a minute, that seems so counterintuitive. It seems like everybody be kind of to themselves, a hood over their head, dark and mysterious, but no, they're the happiest people because they get their words out. They get it all out on the page. Right?
I think there are some who are like that, but they never go outside.
No, okay, true.
But I've had lots of interactions. Yeah. I had I won't name drop, but had an hour-long conversation with a pretty famous horror author. We were just standing around a table in an event, and nicest dude. And some of the stuff he writes is pretty
dark. Yeah,
but just the nicest, most down to earth. There was no warning sign as I'm talking to him that, man, this guy might not be completely stable. And I do think there's some of that those things that they think about, they get out in the world. They don't hold on to them.
All right, let's jump into your books. We talked on Dad Space, and we'll get into that one. But I want to first talk about College Unpacked.
Yeah.
Where does the idea come from to write this book? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I have worked in higher education for 20 years. And then worked with junior high school and college students prior to that. So I have been around college students my entire adult life since I was 19 or so, which I don't know if that counts as adult, but close enough. And when I was a college student. And over the last 2.5 years, I've worked as a dean at Oklahoma City Community College, which is a fantastic place. And I have at OCCC, where I am now, at the University of Oklahoma, where I was for a while. I was also at a small private Christian school for a while. I ran into students who struggled not because they weren't smart, not because they weren't academically prepared, but because they didn't know how to navigate the labyrinth that can be higher education. They didn't know who to ask. They didn't know they could ask certain questions. And talking to parents, talking to students, there was just so much of this system that is more complicated, I think, than it needs to be, but I can't fix the system. So instead, what I wanted to do was provide something. So College Unpacked, the subtitle is A Practical Guide to Choosing, Preparing for, and Excelling in College. And I wanted to write something that was from the time you were ready to start thinking about where you want to go to school through graduation from college.
Yeah.
As much information as I could pack in about, and so it's everything from here are 10 things to think about when you're thinking about a school to here's what a bursar is and what they do. Here's what the provost is and what they do. Here's the difference between a chair and a dean. Here's the difference between a full-time faculty member and an adjunct faculty member, because a lot of students don't know the difference. Here's where you go when something goes wrong. What do you do if you get accused of academic misconduct? What do you do if you get on academic probation? How do you navigate that? So lots of information for students. And then I also, throughout and in a specific chapter at the end, have information for parents about how to engage the higher ed system with their student, but also how to engage their student as they are in the higher ed system. So there's a section on move-in day. And what do you do and what do you not do that day? And how often to visit? And what do you do when you come to visit? And what do you do when your student comes home? Because they've been at college and they are used to living a life where they don't really report to anybody in terms of when they get up and when they go to bed and where they go. So when they come back to your house, that's what they're used to. And if you are used to, well, we know where they are all the time and we've got them on Life 360 and we can track their steps, and like you've got to renegotiate that conversation, and everybody gets to do that in their own way. My point to parents is know that you're going to have to do it. Don't be surprised when that kind of thing shows up. So that's a long answer. It came from this thing of being around students. I want students to be successful. I think education is one of the most important things we have. It is potentially transformational for individuals, families, and communities. And I want students and their families to engage higher education wherever they do it, from Oklahoma City Community College to Harvard. Wherever they show up, I want them to be able to walk onto that campus with confidence. They may not know everything, but they at least know who to ask. And to have that confidence and that permission, if I can use that word, to ask those questions. So one of the things we talk about in the book in lots of different places is, students, this is your education. And so you get to ask questions. Now, you don't always get your way. I'm very careful to make sure they understand that. But you get to ask the questions that you need to ask until you understand what's going on.
Okay, so it addresses students, it addresses parents, covers both?
Yeah.
All right.
The goal all along was not that they would read it together, because I'm not so naive as to believe that's how that's going to work, but to provide information on both sides. Because I've worked in higher education for 20 years. When my kids were applying to college, there were things they had to do and there were things I helped them do. As they navigated college, there were things they had to do on their own. There were things that I could help them do because at least I knew what it was. Now, I couldn't engage because of federal regulations in the United States about information for parents and college students. And we get into that and help parents understand why when you call the school, they won't talk to you. It can be really frustrating for parents. I've had those phone calls where parents get very frustrated with me because I can't talk to them.
Really?
So there's a federal law in the United States that says if they are a college student, even if they are under the age of 18, if they are a college student without their permission, we can't even acknowledge they're a student on our campus.
Wow.
So,
right.
And so if parents aren't aware of that, and all they've been told as they've called is, I can't talk to you, they get really frustrated, and rightly so. They're like, oh, I pay the bill. What do you mean that you can't talk to me about this? So we just help understand, right? This is how this works. And knowing that all of those things are navigated together, I wanted to provide information that would be helpful for both sides. So that the student knows how to engage it, because ultimately it is their education, but also that mom and dad can understand this is what's going on as they're navigating this process. Everything from, a parking ticket to choosing their schedule to deciding where they're going to live and who they're going to live with.
It's to coin a term, a whirlwind of change. There you go. That ties in really well with where you live. A whirlwind of change that's happening in the student's life and in the parent's life.
Yes.
Everything is different.
Yes.
Everything is raw. The whole move-in day is emotional for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone's finding their new identity. You're coming out from under someone's roof and you're in a new place. There's freedom. There's consequence. There's a lot of things going on all at the same time.
Yeah.
and you have mom and dad crying on the way home, and like everything is just raw, right?
Well, I think it's
So
you
yeah,
said everybody is renegotiating their identity because they are. Mom and
yeah,
dad, I renegotiated my identity of what it means to be a father of a college student because that's different than the father of a high school student, than the father of a 10-year-old, than the father of a 5-year-old. And that's one of the things we don't think about. We focus on, well, they're leaving and not so much about, okay, well, then what does that mean for me? Because I'm still dad, but I'm dad in a different way now than I was the day before I moved him in.
does the book help in any way when the university or college is close to home as compared to the other side of the country? Like, is that's got to be different?
It absolutely is. When we talk about some of that, in fact, in the chapter to parents, we talk about don't show up every weekend just because you can. And don't expect them to come home every weekend just because they can. Both of my daughters went to school at the University of Oklahoma, 20 minutes from my house.
Okay.
I could see them constantly, and we do see them quite a bit. But there's not an expectation of them coming home every weekend, and they don't expect us to be there every weekend. We go to football games, and we even get into, if you're going to be on campus a lot for athletic events or whatever, make it about that. Make it about game day, not about visiting your child on campus. You don't have to go see the dorm every time. You don't have to, make them spend all of that day with you when they've got other things they want and need to do as well. Just go to the game and, be in proximity of each other and be around each other during the game and pregame and tailgating and whatever, but don't make that visit about them and, oh, we're back, especially when they're early, because you're right. I've dropped 4 kids off at college and cried on the way home every time, including the 2 who are 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
Those early visits just reinforce that for some folks. So, taking some of the emotion out of it. And then the flip side, for students who are a long way away, we talk about, how do you navigate the fact that you may not be able to go for Parents Weekend or for homecoming, and they may not come home until Christmas or the end of the year because it's expensive.
Right.
And so one of the things we talk about in talking about finding a school are things like that, because those are the hidden costs. College will tell you this is what tuition costs, this is what fees cost, this is what housing costs and parking and all that. What they don't tell you is gas is really expensive here, or if you're going to fly from here home, it's going to cost you $900 every time you do it. Now, people can put that together, but you don't necessarily think about it as the cost of college, but it's something that has to be thought about, because at some point you're going to want them to come home, or they're going to want to come home. And can you afford that part of it, even if you can afford the college side of it?
I'm thinking back while you're talking, Jay. I remember being at college first year, and I didn't know how to do laundry at all.
Right.
I didn't know anything about this magical machine that took dirty clothes and made them clean. I've heard about it. I've seen one in my house, but I didn't know how it worked. And I thought, well, I could drive 5 hours home on a Friday,
right,
and then drive back Sunday night for class Monday morning, 10 hours round trip to get clean clothes, or I could learn how to do laundry. And the reason I learned how to do laundry was I thought, I'm going to be smart, Jay. I'm going to go and I'm going to hire somebody to clean my clothes for me, and I'm just going to pay them.
Okay.
Right? Like, I'm not going to do this until they handed me my nicely clean clothes, underwear included, in a clear see-through bag, which I had to carry through the main entrance of the school in front of all of my fellow students. And they're looking at me like, really?
Right.
Really?
Right.
And I did it once. It cost me a lot of money. I thought I was super smart, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go buy some laundry detergent and figure this out. Right.
And there's outsourcing and there's outsourcing. You crushed that.
Very embarrassing to do that. But I had to learn, right? And you just have to learn these things.
And I think that's to me, that's part of the joy of college and of working with college students, is they are being put in a position where they have to figure things out on their own. And it's fun because they're kind of squirrely, but they're also more open to some of that instruction than maybe they've been previously. I mean, I think about even my own kids, who are great, but there were things that they thought they knew, and then they got to college and realized, oh, wait a minute, I may not know exactly everything. And I had that same experience. You talk about the washing machine. I mean, that kind of stuff. I remember being 18 and knowing everything when I got to college. And then
Of
I got to
course.
college and realized I didn't know a dadgum thing and had to, reassess how smart I actually thought I was. And it's a
Mm,
really fun time to be a part of students' lives as they're sorting it out. And even we have lots of older, I mean, older, they're younger than I am, but adult students who come back to school at OCCC. And it's fun to watch them too, because they're learning as well. And they're trying to renegotiate and navigate a new way of life. And it's just, it's weird to talk about school being fun, but where I get to sit, it's a great time.
what do our kids need from us as parents when we do the move-in day, for example? What where would you give us some boundaries to consider
Yeah.
on how emotionally we deal with this, how we just that whole move-in
Sure.
thing. I watch parents do this, and they pull up with their truck, and it's packed,
Yeah.
and I just don't know what would you give us as advice on move-in day.
So a couple of things. One is, and this is probably more to the dads out there than the moms, but I've seen it go both ways. Whatever the rules are for the college for move-in day, no matter how dumb you think they are or how much better you think you can do it, follow the rules. Because I've watched chaos break out when some dad, I'll just keep accusing dads, says, well, if I park here, that'll be easier for me. Well, you're right. But they're moving in 1,000 students into this building and they know what they're doing. So whatever the rules are, just follow them, because that also then signals to your child when they are confronted by the rules that we follow them, not because we think they are brilliant, but because that's what we do and it makes sense for everybody because it's not just about you. So from a very practical perspective, that when you talk about the emotional side of it, it's really interesting because, again, my 4 kids, very different on the scale of emotional versus not. My wife is a pretty emotional person. I'm a pretty emotional person, especially as I've gotten older. And and so we we knew our kids well enough to know what was appropriate in front of them and what to hold back until we got in the car, and then we just let it go. And I think, to me, the key is when you're moving them in, focus on the fact that you're moving them in. Let that be a fun day. Focus on, we got to put stuff on the walls. We got to make sure the bed's right. We got to loft the bed or not loft the bed and move furniture around. And we're hauling refrigerators upstairs together. I mean, just all that kind of stuff. Let it be about that and not about, I'm moving my baby into there. And I don't mean to say that in a way that sounds denigrating. That was awful, and so I
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah, yeah,
But I think it can be overly emotional from the jump, and that's
yeah,
not really helpful for anybody.
yeah,
So, make it about the event, make it as fun as you can. Take them out to get the last good meal they might have for a while before they go to cafeteria food. Make the
yeah.
Walmart or the Target run because you know there's going to be stuff you forgot. Enjoy that. And then when it's time to go home, hug them, kiss them if that's your thing, and get in the car and go home.
Yeah.
And even, some of my kids had events that they had to go to at a certain point during the day. And so we knew that at 3 o'clock we were done because he had to go to orientation, or at 5 o'clock she was done because she had this meeting. So
Yeah.
we had to get things in there and have that cutoff time. And I'll stop with this. I read something on the message board or something somewhere about a mom and a daughter where the daughter told mom, when I make the bed, that means it's time for you to go. It wouldn't be emotional. It wouldn't be like, okay, now you got to get out of here. It's just, when I make the bed, that signals that I'm ready, that I'm okay. We're moved in,
Wow.
and she did that every time they moved from dorm to apartment, whatever. And the mom said it was interesting because sometimes it was pretty quick and sometimes she held off making that bed as long as she possibly could. But it let her be in control of that moment, which I think is a really important thing.
Okay. So, being that the book is designed for students and parents, to the students that are listening, how can we as students honor our family and the distance now? What do our parents need from us as students now that we're away from home on our own? What can we do for them?
It's a great question. I think the single most important thing that students can do in general, and then we can talk about parents, is learn to communicate well. And to learn to communicate in the way that the recipient of the communication communicates. So, for example, current college students hate email. Colleges love email. Your professors love email. Now, you can hate it all you want, but that's still how your professor is going to give and receive information to you. So learn to accept email, learn to use email, learn to love.
Yeah.
And I don't love email, but learn that that's a part of it. So the same thing with mom and dad. I have kids. If my kids text me and we text back and forth for a minute, and we send a meme off or two and tell a joke and I'm good. I've communicated with them and I know they're okay, and we've kind of had our moment. My wife wants them to call, not every day, but I have 3 kids right now who are living in other states, and she wants to hear their voice and see their face if possible on FaceTime at least once a week. And my kids know that, and they're very faithful to honor that. And I deeply appreciate that for them because they have busy lives. So I think that's one of the big pieces, is to be ready. Just know that you're going to need to call your mom. You're going to need to call your dad. You're going to need to text every now and then just to let them know you're still around, and share your life where you are with them. Because it's hard for us, especially if it's a campus that's a long way away, to picture what your life is like.
Yeah.
And so it can happen sometimes that we think, oh, well, they're by themselves, they're lonely, or they've got to walk a long way in the heat and the rain and whatever. And so to be able to share not always the serious stuff, but just kind of the goofy stuff. My youngest daughter doesn't like walking by herself after dark, which I'm totally fine with, and so she will FaceTime me while she's walking, and we talk about nothing. And laugh about the curb she just tripped over and the dog that she sees as she walks on, and she'll turn the camera around, show me the dog. And it's just this very innocent, goofy conversation that might go on for 10 minutes. But again, now I'm a part of her campus existence. I know where she is. I know what's going on. And we've communicated. We've just spent some time together. So I think that's the really big thing, is to just communicate, and communicate in the way that mom and dad want to be communicated to. It's not just sending Instagram stories and tagging them and thinking that's okay. But having that communication with them. And then the other piece within that communication is being honest about where you are. One of the things that happens as I'm interacting with parents and their students, sometimes students aren't always upfront with their parents about what's going on and where things are. And so the parent will come to us and say, why is my student failing? Or why did my student fail? Or why do they have this academic misconduct thing? Or what's going on? My student would never. And they've told me they wouldn't do this, or they didn't do this. And then we show them, after getting all the permissions with the FERPA stuff we talked about earlier, we'll show them the video that we have of them cheating on their exam, or we'll show them the grade book that shows all the zeros of stuff they didn't turn in. Well, now I'm in the midst of a really awkward situation, because now that parent is ready to turn on their child. The child's backpedaling as hard as they can, and I'm just sitting behind the desk going, I would like to not be in this room anymore. Let me step out while you guys sort this out. So I think that communication, that honesty, even if it's hard to be honest about where things are, it's hard to hear from your kids that I'm struggling. It's hard for our kids to say to us that I'm struggling. But we can help navigate those conversations.
Okay.
If we don't know,
all right,
we can help.
So a first-time reader coming to college, Unpacked, what's your love letter? What's the big picture, so that we can break? I want people to buy it for themselves, but I also want them to buy it for other people as well. So let's do that pitch, and I want to jump into your other book as well.
Sure. I think that if you are looking for a roadmap to navigate the convoluted, unnecessarily difficult world of higher education, whether you are a sophomore in high school just now starting to think about how do I get to school, what school do I go to, or you're a junior in college who's just run into an academic misconduct allegation and having to figure out how to do that, that's who this is for. Or if you know people who are the parents of folks in these situations, I think that's who it's written for. I want every student to be confident. I want every student to be successful. And I believe with everything I've got that this book will help give that confidence and point them towards success as they navigate their higher ed journey.
The other book, God Help Me, I'm a Young Dad, we kind of used it as a basis of conversation on Dad Space, and we'll have a link for that. Everyone go listen to that conversation. It was really fun. But the beginning for this book, where did the idea come to write this one?
So this one came when I found out that my son was about to have his first child. And so Caleb and his wife Maria told us that they were expecting a baby. And after all of the emotions that come from that, I thought about all the things that I wanted to be sure he knew about being a dad, that I hoped he'd learned from me by watching and, me being his dad for 25 years, but that I hadn't really articulated or said. And so we're kind of a letter writing family. And I just started writing him a series of letters about different things that I was thinking about that I wanted to be sure that he had. And as I was writing those letters, I realized there are a lot of young men in my life who either are getting ready to have their first child or have a child or two and are pretty young. And if this is good information for him, for my son, it would be good information for everybody. And so that really encouraged me to put it into a book form so that I could get it out more widely, not just to the young men in my life, but to young men everywhere. And 6 weeks later, it was ready to go out in the world.
Excellent. And it's written for dads with kids from birth to age 12, roughly? Its age range?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. What's a young dad? Well,
yeah.
I mean, you get to decide if you think you are. But yeah, if your kids are before teenagers,
okay.
I do not try to explain teenagers.
No, that's a totally different book.
Yeah, that's a much longer, that's not 100 pages. That's a much longer book. But helping dads navigate those early years, both for themselves and for their kids.
And there's a nice format to the book as well for the reader, right? And how they consume the book. Can you explain a little bit more about that as well?
Sure. No, it's very intentionally set up because dads don't have a lot of time. I didn't when I was a young dad. And so it is set up to be digested one chapter at a time. The chapters are 8 to 10 pages. They are stories. It's information. It comes from a faith perspective. So it talks about, this is what love looks like. This is what service looks like. This is what gratitude looks like from that faith perspective. And then is set up to be intensely practical and applied. So the goal is, Dad, as we talk about being joyful, here's what that can look like in your life. But also, here's what you can do with your kids, whatever age they are, 2, 12, 25, to help them begin to build joy into their lives as well. So that idea of jumping from, idea to application, it's even got some devotionals in there for each chapter, but it's designed to be read over 30 days as opposed to sitting down and just knocking it out in a couple of settings, so that there's time to kind of sit with it, to think about it, and to really think about what application looks like.
Do you think you met your goal for that book?
I absolutely do. And again, as I talk to folks who have read it, one of the things they talk about is they appreciate the fact that they can read one chapter and go away and then come back a couple weeks later and pick up the next one. But I think very much in terms of telling the story, saying the things that I wanted to say, encouraging young dads in the way I wanted to encourage them, but also creating something that they can use and not just ingest was really important to me. And I think that's definitely that kind of book.
Can we also adapt it to, God help me, I'm a young grandfather? Like, is there stuff we can learn as well as grandfather?
I think so. It's funny.
Good.
My mom and dad were some of the first people that read it because they're my mom and dad. And both of them said that to me. Now, they're great grandparents at this point, but they were talking about how the things that they read and thought about with some of their younger grandkids were still, things that they could apply. Because again, it's about building these things into our lives so that our kids see them and understand what they are, and then helping our kids understand how to begin to develop those. So I think it works for uncles and aunts and cousins and neighbors. And if you have young kids in your life, I really do think there's something here for everybody.
Because as a new grandfather, you get to be a model again,
right,
to the next generation, right? And you get to start all over again.
And it's super fun because you think you know more at this point. I don't know if that's true, but
yeah, well,
so far so good.
We'll leave that in because I think that's really important. Yeah, I think we all know we all know it all, right? I think that's great. Any feedback from your kids about Dad wrote a book about being a dad?
So I tried to be very careful to not out them too much. And stories that I have in the book about them, and there are stories about each of my kids, I asked their permission. And my daughter, the author, Hannah, did come back and say, Dad, I really wish you would leave this part out. And so I won't say what that is. But it was something that it was funny because she was 3 when it happened. But she was like, I don't want people to know that it's not bad. It's just one of those things, right? So yeah, they just kind of indulge the things that I do. My son tells me that he's read it. I'm not going to quiz him on it and make sure that's true or not. My other kids don't have kids yet, but they all have copies. So when the time comes, they'll be ready for that. I think they're proud of Dad that he has done something like this, and they're hugely supportive. I have an author talk and signing deal tomorrow that Hannah's already told me she's coming, my daughter that lives in the city. And some of the other kids have said, we're sorry we can't be there, but they live far away. So yeah, it's fun to be my age and have young adult children that are getting to watch me kind of step into this new thing in my life.
That's encouraging. I think that's great.
Yeah.
It'd be a great book for a young dad, a new dad in your life, in your family that's going to be having a baby soon. Put this in their hands. It's something that can really be helpful. There's going to be some downtime when feedings are happening, or you can't sleep because it's 3 a.m, and you have a chance to pull this open and see and get some guidance for you in your journey as a dad.
Love it.
I like it. Where do we go, Jay, for all things Jay Hall? And to follow you as an author, you got new things coming up in the future. Where do we go? What do we do?
The easiest way to connect with me is through social media, and it's at Okie Bookcast in all of the places. And again, that's OKIE Bookcast, and I'm sure Dave will link some things.
Yep.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and Threads and Facebook, and love interacting with people, not just around the show, because I didn't want to get into having 7 different Instagram handles and all that for the different things that I do. So Okie Bookcast is kind of where it all settles in. And so I love interacting with people there. And then websites, okiebookcast.com is the podcast website, and you can get links to everything there. And my author site is J Hall Writer, WRITER, and that's just the letter J, jhallwriter.com. And there's links there to get College Unpacked, to get God Help Me, I'm a Young Dad. And there's also opportunities to bulk order both of those, because I know like men's groups, I've had men's groups that purchased God Help Me, I'm a Young Dad, had a church that bought it for all their dads for Father's Day. And so I'm going to give a greatly reduced rate for that kind of thing. If you've got 10 college students in your life that you want to give College Unpacked, connect with me and let's figure out how to do that a little cheaper than the retailers can do it. I'll just say it that way. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking if I'm a college like a high school counselor, and I have students coming in my office, I'd love to have that sitting on my desk. That'd be a good thing to have.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Jay, thank you so much for doing this.
Great.
I get to have conversation with you, and that makes me happy. And eventually we'll have you on the How to Podcast series as well to go into a little bit more about the show. It's a great podcast. I love you and what you do with your daughter. I think that's such a beautiful picture of a dad moment, to be able to do something creative with your daughter. That's so cool.
It is so fun and gives such a glimpse into our relationship, because we mess with each other constantly on that show, which is how we do it in life too. So Dave, thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Everyone, all information for Jay in the show notes. As always, go and follow his podcast, like, share, follow, do all the things, and leave him some comments and ratings and reviews. I know he'd love to hear your thoughts about the podcast. It's encouraging for us as podcast hosts, and that's one thing we can do as well. When you buy Jay's books, do the same thing. Reviews, reviews, reviews. Jay loves to hear your thoughts on his books. So,
absolutely.
Jay, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Dave. It's fun.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com, and also in the show notes, helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.